Okay, South Carolina and Kansas. Anywhere? Anywhere? Okay. All right, can I have everyone's attention? Sorry. Okay, I'd like to get started. All right, thanks everybody. So I want to just quickly talk about what we're going to be doing here today. I'm going to quickly go over the first couple of asks. When we get to the third one, that's on the HR 4241, a bill that gets more data to states and to MPOs to help them plan. We actually have a data guru on access data here who's going to come up and give a little deeper explanation of that and answer some questions. When he's done, I'm going to come back and talk about what we want to do in the meetings today. After that, I'm going to have, you'll all be sitting with your state groups, going through your folders, figuring out, talking through your meetings for tomorrow and how you want those to run. Ken and I will be walking around to answer any questions. We can answer questions on the asks, we can ask questions on the process, anything like that. But we're going to go through this quick, so if you're in a state with a state coordinator, they may be able to answer those questions and we'll have time to go through that. If you don't have a state coordinator, or if you're a state coordinator who still wants a little help, we are here to help you. All right. So the first ask, we've heard a lot today and yesterday about the Trump infrastructure package, or the infrastructure plan. So that's going to be our first ask. And this one is a little bit different than some of the asks we usually do. So when you open up your black folder, you have a bunch of the red folders that are the leave behinds for the members of Congress. You'll also have a series of just one-pagers saying how to talk about the infrastructure package in your meeting. That's your cheat sheet or your private sheet. That you can take with you into the office, but try to remember to take it out too, okay? And so when you open those folders, you'll see on one side a bunch of fact sheets that have red on the top. Those are to make the ask of the members of Congress or their staff. On the other side are fact sheets that have blue on the top. The blue, that's state-specific information. And we talked about you may want to use some of that. You may want to just pass it on to your member of Congress in the packet, depending on what tells the story best about what's happening in your state on biking and walking. Again, if you have some questions about what those are, Ken and I will help you afterwards. All right. So the Trump infrastructure plan, quick and dirty, the things you need to know. It breaks the money into 4 categories. First one is innovative grants. That's half of the money. That's the biggest one that projects in general will be eligible for. The second one is rural funding. That's a block grant to governors to do with where they think they have the biggest infrastructure need. The third one, transformative grants. They're really thinking about freight projects, ports, airports, things like that. The last one is a set of loans and tax incentives to get private money in. So the one we would care about the first two, the innovative and the rural. Our biggest problem with the Trump infrastructure plan is that first bucket, the innovative grants, that's 50% of all the money. The way you qualify to get that grant is by putting in the money. Whoever puts in the most money wins. That's how that grant program is going to work. The most federal money you'll get for a project out of that is 20%. So it's a flip of what usually happens in transportation. Usually, it's 80% federal, 20% local. And our problem with this, one is we think that we should be judging projects not based on how much money you can put in, but based on what problem those projects solve. Is it going to improve safety? Is it going to fix a gap in a network? Is it going to build a multimodal project? Those sorts of things. So when we go into the office tomorrow, we'll have the two leave-behinds, the one that's public that you are going to leave behind, and the private one that you're going to take back. And you're going to talk through this fact sheet and the principles on that, which is that we prioritize safety, multimodal projects, fixing of gaps, local control for funding, and resilient infrastructure, building infrastructure so that it can withstand weather events 20, 50 years, whatever the life of that project is. But build it once and build it right. If you look at the cheat sheet, I've got a couple questions to help you start that conversation. And then a set of questions to go through with the staffer or the member of Congress and say, well, do you support safety as a priority? Do you support multimodal projects? And I want you to go through those 5 principles and take notes on what they say. That's going to be great information for me moving forward. We also just want to highlight that there's other ways to make decisions based on more than just how much funding is coming in. All right, so that's the Trump infrastructure ask. Let's see if I can do. The next one is funding the Tiger Grant Program. The Tiger Grant Program, what we love about the Tiger Grant Program is that it's a competitive project that funds projects that are hard to fund under normal transportation funding. It does a lot of multi-jurisdictional projects. So Philadelphia got a grant that helped build a bike ped network between Philadelphia and Camden, New Jersey. It funds multimodal projects. And bike and ped projects do a lot better under Tiger than they do under highway transportation in general. This year, though, there's some debate, or there has been debate in Congress about whether or not to fund it. The Trump budget zeroes it out. The House of Representatives zeroed it out. The Senate funded it at $550 million. And for a while, we were really worried because the budget numbers were low. Last month, Congress agreed on budget numbers that are a little bit higher, and in that they included new money for infrastructure. That money has to be divided up between transportation, between drinking water, sewer systems, stormwater, cleaning up brownfields. So there's a lot of different infrastructure uses. Some of it will go to transportation, and we'd like to see that go to some multimodal projects, specifically Tiger. So our ask on that is, will the senator or representative support robust funding for Tiger in the 2018 and 2019 budget. They're going to be voting on this on March 23rd, so this one's really time sensitive. That's an ask we want to make. So our third ask is HR 4241, the Transportation Access and System Connection Act. And the goal of this is to improve transportation planning by giving states and MPOs more data and access data. And this data will work really well with that new report Secretary Chow announced about how to measure connectivity in networks for biking and walking. And this bill has a really good chance if we can get a Senate companion bill, because it's introduced by 4 members of Congress, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, all on the Transportation Committee, and it's not going to cost any new money. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Pettit, who's from Sugar Access and Citilabs, and he's the data guru. He's the one who's helped create this data and can help you explain why the data is important and how it can be used. So thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Caron. As Caron said, my name is Matthew Pettit. I'm a product manager at Citilabs. Citilabs is a mobility data and transportation planning software. So we've been providing tools to metropolitan planning organizations, state DOTs, local governments for 20 years or so. What I'm here to talk to you today about is accessibility. So I'm sure we hear a lot about, mobility, maybe not so much as about accessibility, and there's a lot of confusion on, are these two things the same? Mobility sounds great, let's just have that. So what I'm really here to talk about is why we need accessibility and not necessarily mobility. And also just want to thank you for having me. I've moved to Atlanta 3 years ago, still going strong without a car, bike to and from work, so I know that's only possible with people like you, so thank you. Maybe in the summer it gets too hot and I take an Uber, but what can you do? So what House Bill 4241 does is that it pushes the MAP 21 legislation forward. So the MAP 21 legislation focuses a lot on performance-based transportation planning, which is great. It talks about safety, road maintenance, traffic congestion. But what we really want to do is put a context to those performance measures. If I'm talking about congestion management around my region, is it in a place that is going to affect a lot of people, some people? Who are those projects affecting? Where are those trips going to? So what we really want to do is focus on an individual's access to vital destinations. So this could be school, education, it could be employment centers, it could be local vital essential trips that we have to make every day, grocery stores, shops, and other destinations such as that. So the bill would provide for 5 states and 10 metropolitan planning organizations data to measure this multimodal accessibility locally. I'm going to skip over this boring stuff as Caron instructed. So the current landscape of transportation planning, that's what my background is that we have a lot of data, but the problem is that the data is a lot of times siloed into modes. And when we look at things that they talk about for auto projects, speed, delay, level of service, we don't have that for non-auto modes. We don't have that for transit. We don't have that for walking and biking. When we talk about walking and biking, we say, yeah, that street looks nice. It must be nice to walk on. But what we really need to do is have a way to connect these things. So we need to understand why people travel and the impact or how much people travel using an idea of accessibility, and that I want to measure this accessibility to these valuable destinations and I can do that across all the modes. Because when you actually look at the data, people would much rather walk or bike, especially to those everyday destinations such as your local grocery store or something else. But we focus so much on the auto trip during the congestion time that we get away from actually looking at those types of trips.
So would this give us a level of service? Sitting on all these committees, you're always hearing about level of service. And when they're making decisions on the county level, that usually overpowers a lot of other discussion.
What this will do is it will create a new metric and that's what we're trying to build, a knowledge base and move past this level of service for auto and then create a new metric, and the new metric, accessibility, you can be described for every mode. So this is something that should be a hot topic for them at the planning commission at your local jurisdiction. So when you talk about giving context to mobility, mobility really describes travel speed, level of service, vehicle throughput, person throughput at one place in time. Maybe that's a highway. This is kind of getting at suburban sprawl. We keep on building and they keep coming in terms of drivers. But what we really care about is the origins and destinations and the ability to travel between those two points. So we want to understand what is the context of that roadway. How does it help everyone who lives in these particular areas get to those particular destinations? And that's what we're talking about when we talk about accessibility. So when I'm a traveler in my region, in my city, I have all these questions that I'm going through when I make a trip. Okay, where do I need to travel to? What modes are available? Is there transit service? How long am I willing to travel to? What time of day? Is there a lot of traffic? Is there not a lot of traffic? Are there a lot of buses running? And then what else might affect my travel experience? So when we talk about what else might affect my travel experiences, this is exactly what we're talking about for biking and walking. People don't walk because it's faster, they don't bike because it's necessarily faster, but I get more utility from that trip. I enjoy that. It's less stressful for me. I know that because I can't go 1 second in a car in Atlanta and not get stressed. So for those of you who have heard about level of traffic stress from the Mineta Institute and the reports that they've given out, this is what we were talking about. We're talking about that as an individual, I'm going to value riding on a neighborhood street that's 25 miles per hour, a 2-lane road, maybe a protected bike lane, much higher than a major state highway, 45 miles per hour, mixed traffic biking. And how we can actually operationalize this, and how we have operationalized this working in Virginia on some accessibility work there, is that if they put a project forth that's going to say widen the road or increase the speed limit, like they might see an increase in auto accessibility, but they would see a decrease in walking and biking accessibility because now my level of traffic stress is higher for biking, and that will show lower accessibility for that. So when we talk about, there's a lot of types of different accessibility metrics. We can measure non-work access, such as a walk score or a bike score. We can look at simple things such as minimum time cycling to the grocery store, the number of jobs that are accessible via cycling. So these are all types of things that we can put into context to really understand how your trip is being affected and what type of accessibility we're talking about. So here we can see non-work accessibility, such as an access score, or we can zoom out and look at more of a regional accessibility score. So when we talk about the House bill and moving forward with MAP 21, there are a lot of local MPOs and state DOTs who have put forth biking and walking performance measures, but not all of them have done that. They basically have to go out themselves saying, okay, well, us as an MPO, us as a state DOT really care about walking and biking. So some have done that and are great, and are doing stuff like this, but if this is not a federally mandated thing, then we're not gonna see that happen. So just in terms of example project, to understand, okay, well, what types of projects could get, a big boost in funding if this accessibility starts to be a performance measure. It's something like this. So in Madison, Wisconsin, as typical with a city, you have a interstate bifurcating a major area, and for a biker, those two arrows are the only way for that neighborhood in the middle to cross over that highway. And maybe there's a lot of employment on the other side, maybe there's a grocery store. How might that affect transportation? So using the data that we have on biking land use and other information, we can start to understand, well, okay, we'll look at a scenario where a project was put forth for putting a bike trail underneath the highway. How would that affect the, say, access to jobs for biking? And we can actually quantitatively measure that, which we haven't been able to do before without this information. So now we can start to see what are the benefits to these types of projects and start to look at them on a multimodal basis. So this example is on the back, I believe, of your cheat sheet for this House bill. If there's any other information as well, feel free to ask any questions, and thank you.
We have some microphones here. It might be helpful so everyone can hear the question.
Yeah, two questions. First of all, the current status on the bill, and secondly, whether any states or communities have been considered for this pilot project. Any ideas to who those might be if it's passed?
I'll defer to Caron.
So the bill has been introduced, and it's just starting to gather co-sponsors. So that's what we're going to do, is go and try to get more co-sponsors on the bill. And about how the states and MPOs will get chosen. That will be up to the U.S. Department of Transportation. This bill was written in a way to make it as easy as possible to say yes. It doesn't cost any money. It lets DOT be the arbitrator, so it's not like just the sponsors get the goods. So. Robin?
I have a question about the bill. Typically, it's easier to get Democrats on bike-related bills. Is that a problem if somehow we load it up with a bunch of Democrats, we don't happen to get any more Republicans? Is that a problem? Or do you need us to pace ourselves in Democrats versus Republicans?
So you guys don't need to worry about pacing yourself. I'll work with the congressional offices. What we'll do is if we get a lot more Democrats than Republicans, they'll sign up, but we won't officially put them, the members of Congress won't officially put them on the bill. They'll try to do a 1-1. But they'll let me know and I'll let you know so you can still thank your member for trying to sign on. Okay? But it's also really helpful, just the more offices that know about it and are committed to it, because you never know when there's a chance to get something like better data onto a bill that may not even be a transportation bill. It's good. I'm gonna have you go to the mic. Paul?
This is just a logistical question for those of us from big states that don't have a lot of bodies. What do you suggest is the best way to get those packets to the right people? Is that something we can work with your contractor, or is that up to us?
So what I'd say is,
Or is that even worth the time?
so for the meetings that you have scheduled, go to those meetings. I'll talk with states that have that concern after. While we have Matt here, I want to see if there's any questions about the data and the mapping.
Perfect timing. I'd love to ask that question. Matt, this is the geeky engineer question. So level of service, for some of us are very familiar with, ABCF. Like, there's also D.
Right.
Multimodal level service. It's much more subjective, really hard for a lot of people understanding outside of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. What you're creating, I'm assuming you're going to be delving into existing GIS data that a lot of organizations have, then you're going to be creating some sort of matrix to evaluate the data. What's the output? And because that's a question that I want to be ready to answer. I hate to do an ask and say, please support something. And they say, great, what's it going to look like? And I go, I don't know, they're going to play with data. And I understand completely that part of this, the bill is to get this in place so we can actually do something, which is very positive.
Right. So the output would be, I would say, like multimodal accessibility maps to understand in every community that we're looking at, how does walk accessibility versus bike accessibility versus transit accessibility versus auto accessibility look? And then the best part about having all this data is that we can start to overlay it with socio-demographic information to understand who in those areas potentially would have poor levels of service. So I was just actually at a meeting with the Greater Washington Partnership, and this is exactly what we're doing with them as well as other organizations, is to basically you create a needs map and show where their biggest needs that aren't being addressed in terms of these types of transportation projects. I would hope that, and this would be up to kind of furthering the bill, that the organizations are starting to look into their long-range plans and their tips to see and start measuring, because the point is not to just measure accessibility as it is today, is to understand how the projects that I want to fund are going to affect accessibility. So if these DOTs and these MPOs are actually taking their projects that are in their long-range plan or in their tip and analyzing them in terms of accessibility, they're probably going to learn a lot more than they have before. So the goal is to definitely help them understand how their projects are going to be affecting the local accessibility.
Perfect, awesome goal. So just to put it in my little engineer brain, you're not going to give me a number or a letter. You're going to give me a series of exhibits at the end of the day which define different aspects of accessibility then for us to evaluate. So you're going to create a picture which anybody can look at and understand.
Right, and the goal is to really empower the DOTs and the MPOs with this data, or with the tools. Actually, they can ask the question themselves, what is the accessibility in their community, and have the tool in their hands to measure that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for this. If I might just give my take on how I would sell this to my congressmen who aren't cyclists and so on. It's super inexpensive, costs zero in the budget, but what it allows them to do is spend the money that we are already spending on these projects in a more effective way. I mean, that's the sell. The money we're already spending is going to be going more effective. Now, if you have someone who loves bicycling and walking, you might get into, we think it's also going to make the case for spending maybe a little more money on biking and walking because it makes the case, but it's spending the money we're already spending in a better way because we have the data to show where it's most needed.
Right, and this is exactly what the Commonwealth of Virginia is doing right now with their Smart Scale project prioritization process. So they are using accessibility and land use as part of their prioritization process to fund and prioritize projects within the state.
Right, because that was my actual question is, any more examples besides Virginia of where this is being used now and how it's helping?
We're definitely working with a lot of MPOs across the country, but in terms of actually, the trick is, it's one thing for a planner and engineer to do an analysis, another thing to actually put something into policy saying that we have to measure this and we have to use this as a performance measure. So that's kind of the best case right now that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So my question is, have you guys really honed in on a really effective soundbite for this that we can deliver?
Okay. So if you look at your red sheet that says 4241 on the top, on that, it has some background. It has 3 points about what it does, and then it's got 3 points about why it matters, including that it's an efficient use of transportation funding. So look at those. See if those work for you. If you think there's a message that would work better for your state, then you're okay using that as well.
One more question, kind of the same vein. I read what it said on there in background and all that, but you come from a place that has used this type of data, and I mean, if I were to tell my DOT or my MPO, here, now apply for this pilot and they'll teach you a new way to do this? Or you have to figure it out? Or we really wish you would because it will be better for all users, including us bicyclists? You know, they do it one way now. Why would they want to change? I'm just saying, what's the, I know getting the pilot information would be great, but I think where he works, they already do stuff like that. So it's like, they're going to get some help to know how to do this, right?
Yeah, I guess two things. One, I've gone out and talked to 50 or so, MPOs, and the planners in those organizations would love to have this information, this, tool set, but as you know, MPOs do not necessarily get all the funding, or they don't have the resources to do that. So that is one thing. And the other thing is to also, it's not just giving people data or tool and just saying good luck, but rather we're working with the State Smart Transportation Initiative, Smart Growth America, to really build, best practices of, why accessibility matters, how to actually operationalize it locally. And that's definitely gaining a lot of ground. So there's definitely a, movement in terms of operationalizing it. That's gaining a lot of support in terms of moving from this kind of classic level of service analysis, highway capacity manual, and moving away from that.
All right, so thanks, Matt. And Matt has agreed to stay a while, so when you're in your state groups, if you still have questions, he's around to help with that. One more argument I'd say is that if you're using money more efficiently, all states should be interested in that it's a cost-saving message. I think that'd be the biggest one. And you can say, right now there's a couple states that are already doing it, but they're paying for it. And wouldn't we want to do this, but maybe we don't have money for it? That's just another. So, all right, so yeah, thanks. Matt's going to hang around for a little bit. You've got your ask is for your member of Congress to co-sponsor it. This is an ask only for the House. We don't have a bill yet in the Senate, but we're getting close. So those are the three asks. Can I go back to the slides again when they get them back? So what I would like you to do now, let's see, in the groups is think about how that Hill meeting's going to go. And I want you to think about it in this context. The Hill is very, very busy tomorrow, so you're probably looking at 20-minute meetings. You want to use that time efficiently, like our planning data. So you want to keep your introduction short. Who you are, why you're there, who you represent. So if you're representing a local group, you want to say that. If you're representing a local government or university, say that. You want to take a little time to talk about bicycling in your state. What is the message you want to tell them about biking in your state? Those blue sheets in your packets have some data that we work on at the League. It's got your Bicycle Friendly America awards. It's got your Bicycle Friendly State report card. The feedback on that, a lot of that comes from you, comes from advocates in your state, so you might want to highlight something you're doing there. You might want to highlight something the state is doing really well, especially if it relates to our principles. So look, we have a complete streets policy, so we want an infrastructure plan that funds multimodal projects, something like that. And then you want to make the asks. You have 3 asks in the House, 2 asks in the Senate, and then you have an invite to the reception tomorrow night. In your meetings, I want you to take a little time now to sort of plan your angle for the different members of Congress you're going to meet with, or at least say the senators. So we know our senator is really into mountain biking, so we're going to talk about the recreational and health side of this. We know our senator is really big on looking at economic development, so we're going to talk about the economic development side of biking and what's happening in our state. So think through that. If you've got a big group, you want to make sure you know when you go into that meeting who's going to lead the meeting. You want to know who's going to make the ask. There should be somebody taking notes so that you can report it all back to me. And who's going to bring the packet? And you can do all that 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the meeting if you just meet up in the hallway. But I just want you to have a plan coming out of today, so when you get to the Hill tomorrow, you're not panic standing around, or you don't spend the whole meeting with your congressman talking small talk. If it's an office that is likely to be unfriendly, they may try to use up as much time as they can in small talk. So just be prepared for that. And the last thing I want to let folks know about before you break up into state groups is that if you are free between, say, 10 and 1 tomorrow, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has a subcommittee called Highway and Transit. They're having a hearing tomorrow morning about how we should pay for transportation, how we should find long-term funding for transportation. Very often when they have these discussions, the point comes up that people who take transit, who bike and walk, are not paying in, so maybe they shouldn't be getting facilities out. If I had to bet, I would bet that point's going to be made tomorrow. So if any of you have free time, are interested in hearing the debate, are interested in seeing what happens, go ahead to 2167 Rayburn and wear your bike pin. The really bright colors are going to help in this situation. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that. Okay, Chuck?
In previous years, you had a church where we get together to enter our reports.
Yeah. Good question. There is a Lobby Day headquarters. It's at the Lutheran Church. It's on East Capitol. I think the address is 200 something. It's the same place we've been for the last several years. 212 East Capitol. And your app should have a map on how to get there. We will also have a light breakfast in the morning and probably a light lunch there too. This is both at the church, at the lobby headquarters.
So what time for breakfast?
I know, I'm going to say 8:30 to 9. The map says 8. So the doors open at 8. Maybe breakfast at 8:30. Give us some time to get it all over there. All right. The other thing, the reception is in a different place this year. So 212 East Capitol Street, Northeast. So there should be a map on your app, but there is a road between the Library of Congress and the Supreme Court. It's 2 blocks down that way. So the reception, this year, it doesn't start until 6, and it's on the house side in the Longworth cafeteria. We are going to meet at 5:15 on the steps of the Capitol, on the south side, on the house side, to take a picture, and then we can all go into the reception together. We're going to have at least one member of Congress show up right at 6, so I'd love to get some folks there right away. So we're hoping we can take the picture and get in. We'll have drinks and snacks there, but if you want a sandwich, you should go to the church.
And the representative is Nina Tynes from Las Vegas. So Nevada says, please be there. We want a really great picture with our representative. Please be there.
Yeah. And she's been a great advocate for complete streets, for biking and walking safety, so we want to have a good showing.
So could you clarify, the photo is at 6 on the steps of the Capitol?
The photo is at
5:15.
Yep.
5:15, then the reception's at 6.
Then the reception will take the picture and then all walk together over to Longworth. We're doing it at 5:15 so we can all get through security.
And remember everyone to continue using the NBS18 hashtag, but also to use the Bike Lobby Day tag tomorrow. Thanks.
All right. Any other general questions? All right, now, when the, yeah.
No, when I
Okay.
checked my phone app, I didn't see the meeting, so I don't know if I'm having a
But
problem.
you have a written schedule? So that's a good question. If you have questions about your meetings or the app, Advocacy Associates is right outside at that table, and we're going to have someone come in and also walk around to help answer questions.
And then a whole bunch of states still have their printed meeting schedules right by the podium, so if you don't have your
Okay.
printed schedule,
Yeah.
go up and get it.
Here. I can read off some of these. So, he's already gone. Kentucky, Nevada, New Jersey, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Wyoming prior has his. So I have them up here. She's got them right there. That there's a what? There are, you can just grab a cab right at the entrance. I don't think we have. Are they different from these? Okay. And they're different from this? Okay, I'll take that back. Okay.
Hold on.
Oh, wait a minute. I had one more thing. Let me remember what it was. Okay. Can't remember what I was going to say. Don't worry about it.
Encourage people to join the bike caucus?
Yeah.
As a fourth ask?
I'll do that.
Okay.
People, it's getting too much with the three. So I'm gonna guess that he did because I'm not seeing that here.